Hello, everybody, and welcome to the December 3rd, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. And I figured, what better way to start the week off by getting ourselves spiritually enlightened by none other than Ben Shapiro. He wrote this for Newsweek just today, and I'm just going to read you the title. America is engulfed in a crisis of meaning, and it's killing us. I think Ben's been spending a little bit too much time around Matt Walsh at the moment. Last week, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, National Health Center for Health Statistics, God, that's a long title, released a shocking fact. Life expectancy dropped in the United States for the third straight year, down to 78.6 years as of 2017. Oh no! That's still higher than it's been at any point in human history, but oh no! What exactly drove this decline? Drug overdoses and suicide. Drug overdoses were responsible for more than 70,000 deaths in 2017, with the overdose rate climbing to 9.6% over 2016. Suicides jumped 3.7%. CDC Director Robert Redfield explained, life expectancy gives us a snapshot of the nation's overall health, and these sobering statistics are a wake-up call that we are losing too many Americans too early, too often to conditions that are preventable. The continuing decline in American life expectancy should give the lie to the bizarre notion that drug overdoses and suicide are a result of a stagnant economy. Has anyone actually claimed that? It's been part of the claim that it's part of a recession, which, by the way, we are actually on the verge of a giant economic crash. Go read Tom Hartman's Crash 2016 if you're interested. Or even there are Austrian economists who think we're on the verge of a crash. The only people who don't think we're on the verge of an economic collapse are Donald Trump supporters, and it is just amazing in my opinion. A common theory on both the right and the left. Has anyone actually ever made that theory? Again, economic recessions, yes, but not stagnation. A little nitpick, but stagnation is when there's no growth. Recession is when there's negative growth. I know I'm being nitpicky, but it still bothers me. That theory suggests that the globalized economy has left behind a particular segment of Americans, and those Americans are dealing with economic hardships through drugs and depression. But that wouldn't explain why life expectancy is declining now when it continued to increase throughout the 2007 through 2009 economic recession. Because that's not an actual theory anyone has, and you're making it up. Just as David Brooks of the New York Times points out, economic gains. Oh, also that was way earlier in our current economic state than, 10 years later. Are finally being widely shared, even by the least skilled. Thanks mostly to government transfer programs, income for the bottom fifth of society has increased about 80% over the past 4 decades. Citation needed. Wages stagnated in the 80s. It also wouldn't explain the demographics of drug overdose. The CDC points out some of the greatest increases among heroin use has occurred in demographic groups with a historically low rate of heroin use. Women, the privately insured, the people with higher incomes, yeah, that's because of this thing called party culture. You should look into it sometime. I can't wait for Ben Shapiro's article from 1982. If depression is real, why did John Belushi die? Now that would be interesting. And those taking their own lives are disproportionately not middle-aged people falling out of the workforce. They are older American males, predominantly white. These are not the demographics of economic disposition in the United States. Thank you for... Did you just admit white privilege is a thing? Interesting. No, something else is missing. That something else is the manifesting in social fragmentation, tribal polarization, and political rage. Aren't you a political commentator? America is experiencing a crisis of meaning, and we are filling our need for meaning with whatever we have at our disposal. Drugs, ethnic solidarity. political mobbing. The problems here isn't capitalism and its supposed excesses or classical liberalism and its attestation of individuals. The problem actually doesn't individualism like because individualists are also highly libertarian. Aren't those the people who are most likely to be in favor of legalization of all drugs? Like, nothing you say ever makes any sense to me, I swear. The problem here is that while we have a bevy of circular forces operating on us, we have a central focus. We have very few central focuses bringing us together. Those forces used to be obvious: church, family, local community. And apparently there's no community anymore. You see, there are still communities. I hate this notion that there's no local community because no one goes outside anymore. First off, yes, they do. That's just a lie if you say otherwise. But second off, we formed online communities, which have actually helped because it's people with depression who are most likely to need to go into online communities in order to find anything. And therefore, they actually are doing what you want. It's just not with the people in their area because there's very little choice you get in who's in your area. There's a lot of choice you get in who you talk to online. We shared certain basic Judeo-Christian values, a belief in responsible individual decision-making, caring for our neighbors on a social level. Those two things contradict each other, and you know it. Cherishing our heritage of individual rights, while also performing individual duties in the name of virtue. Also, our heritage of individual rights, how long ago are we talking? Because the second president, John Adams, literally locked up political opponents. Just saying. All of this gave us meaning and purpose. I love the weasel words. But now those values have been torn asunder. For decades, those on the political left have critiqued the social structures that used to bind us. Church, rather than acting as an underlying force, was portrayed as a theocratic oppressor and a massive scam. Because that's what it is. Family, rather than acting as a protector of our children and the bulwark for women, was treated as a patriarchal tyrannical institution. And a little bit strawman-y. No one actually said directly that. Some people probably did say directly that. But the main point was more just women should be able to work outside the house, really. Local communities, rather than being seen as a source of innovation and social support, were seen as torture chambers of paroxysm. What? And also, did it ever consider to you that maybe there are people who just don't like their neighbors? And those people typically became at risk for depression? And then overdosed on drugs or committed suicide? I'm trying to notice something with you. The institutions were raised. We were freed of them by proclaiming our victimhood at their hands. And all that was left was rubble. And out of the rubble, we were supposedly going to build a better world, a world in which responsibility would be assumed by the vast, overarching collective. No one wanted that. That's just nonsense. A world in which individual freedom would be unconstrained by individual duty. Don't be too free. A world in which Judeo-Christian virtue could be safely exercised in favor of niceness or... None of that has come to pass. It turns out tearing away the foundational institutions of a society, we live in a society, dang it, destroys our social fabric. It turns out that removing the rules and tools that gave us shared meaning and purpose left us defenseless before the vicissitude of life. You know, there are still communities people go to. Like, you can find libertarian communities, you can find like weird communist communities, you can find communities filled with gay people in small town, or typically in small parts of big cities, you know, things like that. And there are tons where you can have what you want. They're called the Amish. Look them up. We must regain meaning. That meaning won't be found in a job. That is, or in a welfare check or in a dollar amount. So do you support more, for instance, paid sick leave or minimum wages to allow people to have more of a work-life balance? It will be found only in the reassurance of the value that undergirded our freedoms in the first place, the Enlightenment, the values of Judeo-Christianity. Okay, point to me where in the Bible it says you have free speech. If anything, God says you can't say a lot of things. Point to me in the Bible where it says you have the right to a gun. That's never once mentioned. Point to me where it says you have the right from cruel and unusual punishment. If anything, all punishment is fair when he does it, which provided the fundamental framework for the Enlightenment freedoms we are enjoying today. No, it was removal of those that led to Enlightenment freedoms. The biggest Enlightenment thinkers, people like, Nietzsche, Hobbes, Locke, they all said, this is stupid. You're stupid. Go away. Let me figure things out. Anyway, I ended up taking longer on that than I expected. I'm Ephrom, and good night.